He got the letter on a Tuesday. 2 sentences. Sarah never wasted words. They beat me up and wanted to take everything away from me. Please come. He hadn't seen his sister's handwriting in 10 years. He had been telling himself for 10 years that leaving had kept her safe. He read the letter once. Then he looked at his horse. He rode the horse for 2 days. He came over a dusty rise and saw his little sister hanging from a cottonwood tree. She was still wearing the blue dress, the same blue dress he had ridden 2 days to bring her on the morning of her 8th birthday. He had not seen that dress in 10 years. He had 3 seconds to decide what kind of man he was going to be.
If you rode home after 10 years and found your baby sister hanging from a tree, what would you have done? Tell me her name in the comments. Just her name.
The rider nudged his horse forward. Slowly, the men finally noticed him. One stood. Another rested a hand on his revolver. Roads closed, old man. The rider kept coming. The outlaw laughed. Guess he's deaf. His hand dropped toward his gun. He kept riding. Slow. Steady. The standing man drew first. 1 shot. The valley went quiet. The other 3 looked at their friend on the ground. Then at the rider. Then at each other. Nobody drew. Sometimes a man's reputation does more work than his gun ever could. The 4th froze where he stood, eyes wide, terrified. The old rider stepped off his horse. Silence settled over the road. The surviving outlaw stared at him. Then recognition flooded his face. The man stumbled backward. You. The rider ignored him. He walked straight to the tree, cut the rope, and caught Sarah before she hit the ground. As he lowered her gently into the shade, something on her wrist caught his eye. A dark brand burned into her skin. Old. Deliberate. The mark of Black Mesa Ranch. The old gunslinger's face hardened, because he knew exactly who owned that brand. He had seen that brand once before. A long time ago. On a very different kind of man. He pressed his thumb gently over the mark on her wrist, as if he could take it back. He couldn't. For several seconds, nobody moved. The hot wind swept across the road. Dust rolled between the bodies of the fallen gunmen. The nameless gunslinger knelt beside Sarah beneath the cottonwood tree. Her skin was burning from hours under the sun. Her lips were cracked. Her breathing was shallow. But she was alive. That was enough. For now. Behind him, a low groan broke the silence. The youngest one was still breathing. Shoulder wound. He had crawled 3 feet and run out of strength. The gunslinger stood over him and said nothing for a moment, just waited. Sometimes, silence pulls out more truth than any question. The young man froze. Fear spread across his face. The kind of fear that comes when a legend suddenly becomes real. The gunslinger looked down at him. Who ordered this? The outlaw swallowed hard. Blood stained his shirt. For a moment, he said nothing. Then a crooked smile appeared. You should have stayed gone. The words landed harder than a bullet. The gunslinger's eyes narrowed. Because the young man wasn't surprised to see him. He knew exactly who he was. And that meant somebody else had known he was coming. Mr. Crowe said, if you ever came back. The outlaw's fingers twitched toward his vest, as if reaching for a watch that wasn't there. We were supposed to kill you first. Then the outlaw's head dropped. Dead. The wind grew quiet again. The nameless gunslinger turned back toward Sarah. As he wrapped a canteen cloth around her injured wrist, he studied the dark brand burned into her skin. Black Mesa Ranch. A mark feared across 3 counties. The gunslinger's jaw tightened, because Black Mesa did not waste time on small ranches. If they had branded Sarah, then they wanted something far more valuable than revenge. And somewhere beyond the hills, a powerful man already knew he had come home. Sarah woke up after midnight. The first thing she heard was rain. A slow, steady rain tapping against the roof. The kind of rain frontier ranchers prayed for. The nameless gunslinger sat in a chair beside the stove. A lantern burned between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. 10 years sat between them like a piece of furniture neither one knew how to move. Finally, Sarah broke it. You came. The old gunslinger stared into the lantern flame.
Rain tapped against the roof. The sound pulled him back 20 years, little Sarah, barefoot in the grass, laughing as he taught her how to ride. She had looked at him like he hung the moon. He looked away. Some promises cut deeper than any bullet.
A bitter smile touched her lips. Barely. She looked at him the way people look at someone they have been rehearsing an argument with for 10 years. and suddenly can't remember any of the words. Outside, thunder rolled across the plains. Inside, Sarah slowly sat up despite the pain. She was weaker than she wanted to admit, but there was still steel in her eyes. The same stubbornness she had carried since childhood. The same stubbornness that had kept her ranch alive, while bigger outfits swallowed everything around them. The gunslinger studied the bruises on her arms. "Why didn't you sell?" Sarah laughed once. A short, tired laugh, because that's exactly what they wanted. She pointed toward a wooden chest beneath the window. "Open it." Inside the chest, ledgers, deeds, tax records, survey maps. Years of them. Every page marked in Sarah's handwriting. He had expected to find a woman who needed saving. He found a general who had been fighting alone. At the bottom lay a folded survey map. One corner had been torn away. Sarah's expression hardened. That missing piece is why they're doing this. The gunslinger unfolded the map. The ranch sat directly between Black Mesa's eastern and western grazing ranges. Without Sarah's land, the cattle baron's expansion stopped. With it, he could control nearly the entire valley. The room fell silent. Then Sarah revealed something even worse. "They've done this before." She pushed another ledger across the table. Several ranch names had been crossed out. Families who had vanished. Properties absorbed into Black Mesa, one after another. The gunslinger's eyes narrowed. Because this wasn't about one ranch anymore. This was a system, and somewhere inside those ledgers was the proof that could destroy it. By sunrise, the rain was gone. The valley looked washed clean. But the trouble wasn't. The Nameless Gunslinger spent the morning repairing the ranch fence that Black Mesa's men had torn down 3 days earlier. Sarah worked beside him. Neither spoke much. They didn't need to. Trust wasn't something either of them gave away easily, not after 10 years, not after everything that had happened. The sound of hammers echoed across the pasture. A few surviving cattle grazed nearby. For the first time since his return, the gunslinger saw what Sarah had truly been fighting for. Not just land, a life, a home, a future that somebody powerful wanted erased. Later that afternoon, they spread the ledgers across the kitchen table. Dust floated through the sunlight. Page after page revealed the same pattern. Small ranch, pressure, threats, property transfer, disappearance, again, and again, and again. The gunslinger's eyes stopped on a familiar name, Jacob Turner, a rancher who had vanished 7 years earlier. Sarah pointed to another, then another. Every one of them had eventually lost land to Black Mesa. Everyone. They never needed to shoot anyone, Sarah said, turning a page. They just needed the right name on the right paper, filed on the right day, with the right clerk. She looked up. That's harder to fight than a bullet, and that's exactly what somebody had been doing. Have you ever stayed quiet when you knew something was wrong, even when you knew a powerful man was stealing everything? Drop your answer in the comments. No judgment here, because in towns like this one, silence could become a weapon, and somebody in this town had been silent for years. The room grew still. Sarah opened the final ledger. A folded document slipped free. The paper hit the table. The gunslinger unfolded it. His expression changed immediately. It wasn't another land record. It was a payment ledger. Names, dates, amounts, bribes. The sheriff's name appeared 3 times. A county clerk's name appeared twice. And at the very bottom sat a signature. Ezekiel Crowe. Sarah said nothing. She had known for months. She had just needed someone else to see it. Owner of Black Mesa Ranch. The room fell silent, because they were no longer looking at suspicion. They were looking at evidence. And evidence could get people killed. The sheriff arrived the next morning, not alone. 2 deputies rode beside him. Behind them came a wagon carrying county records. The sight immediately put Sarah on edge. The Nameless Gunslinger noticed. People didn't fear honest lawmen that way. The sheriff climbed down slowly. A folded document rested in his hand. "Morning, Sarah." His smile never reached his eyes. "I've got official business." Sarah crossed her arms. "What kind of business?" The sheriff unfolded the paper. "Foreclosure." The word hung in the air like smoke. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Sarah laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. "I don't owe anyone $1. The sheriff shrugged. "According to county records, you do." The gunslinger stepped forward. The sheriff glanced at him. Recognition flickered across his face, then disappeared. Just as quickly, Ezekiel Crowe was standing beside the sheriff's wagon. He hadn't needed to come. He had men for this. But he had come anyway. That told the gunslinger everything. Crowe was wearing an expensive coat despite the heat, a gold pocket watch on a silver chain. He looked at Sarah the way a man looks at something he has already decided belongs to him. He did not look at the gunslinger at all. That also told him something. The sheriff handed Sarah the notice. Black Mesa Ranch was claiming ownership of grazing rights surrounding her property. Without those rights, her cattle couldn't survive. Without cattle, the ranch would fail. Légal. Clean. Efficient. At least on paper. Sarah's hands trembled as she read. Then, she looked up. You forged this. The sheriff smiled. Can you prove it? The sheriff turned toward his horse. Then paused, almost casually. Oh, one more thing. He pointed toward the barn. A deputy rode forward carrying a torch. The county will be returning tomorrow. His eyes settled on Sarah. I suggest you cooperate before something unfortunate happens. As Crowe turned to leave, he finally looked at the gunslinger. Just once. Brief. I heard you were dead, Crowe said. Not yet, the gunslinger said. Crowe nodded slowly, as if filing that information away for later. Then he left. The riders left in a cloud of dust, and for the first time since returning home, the Nameless Gunslinger realized something. Black Mesa wasn't afraid of the truth. They were afraid of something hidden, something they hadn't found yet. That night, nobody slept. A storm gathered beyond the valley. Lightning flashed behind distant clouds. The ranch sat in silence. Sarah remained at the kitchen table studying the ledgers. The Nameless Gunslinger sat on the porch, watching, thinking, waiting. Something didn't fit. Black Mesa had too much confidence, too much certainty, as if they already knew where every threat was hiding. Then the realization came. There had to be an informant. Someone inside town. Someone feeding Crowe information. The old instinct returned. The same instinct that had kept him alive years ago. Trust nobody. Move alone. Ask forgiveness later. Just before dawn, he wrote Sarah a note. 3 sentences. Going to find the clerk. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone wearing a badge. He left it on the kitchen table, weighted down by his coffee cup. It wasn't enough. He knew that. But 10 years of writing alone had made him forget how fast things could move when he wasn't there. By noon, he had tracked a county clerk to a saloon 20 miles away. The man drank hard, talked harder. For a few dollars and enough whiskey, he revealed something important. Crowe had paid officials for years. Land transfers, false debts, missing filings. Everything was connected. The gunslinger finally had proof. But while he was gone, Black Mesa made its move. 3 wagons arrived at Sarah's ranch. Deputies, hired men, and a court order. Sarah fought. She argued. She refused to sign. It didn't matter. The sheriff declared the property seized. Before leaving, Sheriff Walker unfolded another document. He read it loudly enough for everyone present to hear. If Sarah Kane refuses to sign the transfer by sunrise tomorrow, the sheriff read loudly, she will be publicly hanged beneath the cottonwood tree for resisting lawful seizure. The same tree. The one that had almost taken her 2 days ago. Have you ever lost someone because you waited too long to come home? Tell me in the comments. Silence fell over the ranch. Even the wind seemed to stop. The hired men smiled, because they knew exactly which tree the sheriff meant. The barn was locked, the cattle confiscated, the ledgers taken, and Sarah was arrested for interfering with a lawful order. By the time the Nameless Gunslinger returned, the storm had arrived. Rain hammered the roof. The porch lantern swung wildly in the wind. The ranch stood empty, silent, broken. On the kitchen floor lay a single piece of paper, a message, written in Sarah's hand. They took everything. The old gunslinger stood motionless, water dripping from his hat. He had left to protect her, and she had spent 10 years unprotected. He picked up her note, read it once, folded it carefully, and put it in his coat pocket, next to nothing, because he had nothing left to put it next to. Then he noticed something tucked beneath the note. An old folded document, yellow with age, bearing his father's signature. And suddenly, the fight wasn't over yet. By morning, the storm had passed. The streets of Dry Creek were covered in mud. The courthouse bell echoed across town. People emerged from stores and saloons. Something unusual was happening. Word had spread. The Nameless Gunslinger was back, and he was headed straight for the courthouse. The old document rested inside his coat. His father's document, the missing survey, the piece that had vanished years ago, the piece Ezekiel Crowe had spent years searching for. As he walked through town, doors opened, curtains moved, men watched from wooden porches. Nobody spoke, not yet.
He had spent most of his life solving problems with a gun. Today, he was walking into a courthouse with a piece of paper. He wasn't sure which one scared him more.
Inside the courthouse stood Sheriff Walker, 2 deputies, 3 county officials. The cattle baron looked exactly as powerful as the stories claimed. Expensive coat, silver watch, cold eyes. Ezekiel Crowe smiled when he saw him, his thumb slowly brushing the golden lid of his pocket watch, the same tell the outlaw had shown before dying. 10 years away, and you're still causing trouble. The gunslinger tossed the survey onto the table. Crowe's smile vanished the moment his fingers tightened around the watch. The man who had ordered the branding, the bribes, and the hanging looked visibly shaken for the first time. The survey wasn't just a legal document. 30 years ago, Crowe's first ranch had been failing. A bad winter. Bad debt. He had come to their father with nothing. Their father had given him water rights for a season, enough to survive. Crowe had never forgiven him for it. Some men cannot stand owing a debt they will never repay, so they spend their lives trying to erase the man they owe it to. The gunslinger looked at Crowe for a long moment. Now he understood. This had never been about land. County officials quickly unfolded the document. Maps, boundaries, original survey markings. The missing section proved Sarah's ranch legally controlled the valley crossing Black Mesa desperately needed. For the first time all morning, Crowe looked worried. Then another voice spoke. Sarah. Everyone turned. She entered the courthouse, carrying the payment ledger Black Mesa thought had been confiscated. She placed it beside the survey. Bribes, land theft, forged transfers, years of corruption. The evidence was undeniable. Crowe's empire began collapsing in real time. The sheriff stepped backward. Deputies exchanged nervous glances. Sarah looked directly at Crowe, the man who had terrorized her for years, the man who thought he could break her. Her voice never shook. This is my land. The room went silent. Then she added, and I'm not leaving. Outside, the townspeople began gathering at the courthouse steps, because for the first time in years, someone had finally brought the truth into the open, and the whole town was about to decide what side it stood on. The truth won, but it did not win quietly. Justice moved slowly, the way it always does, but it moved. The ledgers were verified, the transfers reversed. Crowe's men left the valley one by one, the way hired loyalty always leaves when the money stops. But the justice that mattered most happened beneath the old cottonwood tree at sunset. Sarah stood beside him. The wind moved softly through the leaves. You came back, she said quietly. The gunslinger looked at the tree that had nearly taken her life, then at the sister he had abandoned for 10 years. Not soon enough. She smiled through tears. But you came. He touched the brim of his hat, voice thick with regret and relief. Some debts are paid with bullets. The hardest ones are paid by coming home. He didn't ride away that evening. For the first time in 10 years, he didn't.